Which is stronger, vision or delusion? What is a delusion and what's its purpose? What does this have to do with anything, and how does this relate to the Fatui? Welcome to Genshin Theory. On the surface, visions and delusions practically do the same thing. They give their users elemental powers. So why did the Fatui create delusions in the first place? Visions are given out to specific individuals by the divine under the pretext of ascension, which I speculated in this video that it's all a lie and a bait. Now, regardless of that, we know that Tsaritsa is planning to rebel against Celestia and the divine. In a very simple sense, she needs power, something she has unconditional control over, hence creating delusions and empowering her followers of the Fatui. But the question is, are delusions in fact stronger than visions? The lonely Fatui ambassador in Mondstadt gives us some hints regarding this question. Victor states, delusions are treasures of incredible power, granted by Her Majesty, the Tsaritsa, in person. Whether fate or vision, a delusion makes them all look like child's play. Now obviously, Victor may not be the best reference to validate the power of delusions. I mean, let's face it, he's essentially a nobody. Signora practically forgot about him and left him here for months. But to back up Victor's claim, let's refer to a much better source. The only person who we know currently that possesses both vision and delusion. During our battle against Childe, our question gets answered pretty clearly. In the first phase of the battle, we fight Childe in his Hydro element, representing his vision's power. Then after we beat him up for a while, he gets mad and then he activates the Electro element, his delusion. Now, obviously, I'm speculating off of game mechanics, but what boss in any game powers down in their second phase? Not to mention, Signora literally wipes the floor against Venti, who has a Gnosis, a literal supercharged version of a vision. I'm sure you get the point. From using logic, we can deduce that delusions are in fact stronger than visions. Now if we go back to Victor's dialogue, after mentioning the power of delusions, he continues, still, not everyone can wield one. Beyond the 11 Harbingers, very few other Fatui possesses a delusion. Now if Tsaritsa's plan is to empower her followers using delusions, why is it that only few people can possess a delusion? Is it simply a symbol of status? From the manga, we know that Diluc's father, Crepus, had a delusion. To save Diluc from the attack of Dragon Ursa, Crepus uses the delusion and ultimately dies by the delusion's power backfiring. Why did it backfire? In the manga, Amber uncovers a note describing that the usage of delusions leaves a scent of mistgrass. But what's even more interesting is the fact that Amber notices the same scent of mistgrass during an incident when Collei uses her dormant powers to cause havoc. Now Collei doesn't have a delusion, so what's the connection here? Her dormant powers originates from the Archon Residue that was forcefully injected into her body by the Fatui, in a way to manipulate her mental state to hate everything in the world at a young age. Now, due to this reference of scent from both delusions and Collei's powers, it is my speculation that the power of delusions originated from the Archon Residue itself. So what in the world is an Archon Residue? In my hypothesis, Archon Residue is the hatred, resentfulness, or twisted sense of logic left behind by the gods during the Archon War when they were defeated. If we were to consider this idea, the backfiring of a delusion can be simple to explain. They backfire once you lose this sense of hatred or resentfulness. Fatui members that possesses delusions are the easiest to explain. Their excessive hatred and resentfulness towards the divine keeps delusions from backfiring. Now for Diluc, he is seen in the manga using his delusion safely while seeking revenge. Once he obtains closure at the end of the manga, he actually throws away the delusion. In essence, the delusion never really gets a chance to backfire. Now this same delusion actually backfires on his dad Crepus because he becomes content. What I mean by that is Crepus's goal that he never achieved were accomplished by his son Diluc. his resentfulness subsided, and he was willing to accept his shortcomings and move on, but ultimately ends up using the delusion anyway to save Diluc from the dragon, ending in his death. In the case of Collei, the Archon Residue initially doesn't backfire due to her hatred towards the world. Only after meeting Amber and slowly learning to accept peace, she becomes conflicted and is unable to control her powers. Only after the power was sealed by the help of Sino, she was able to escape death and accept peace. However, Sino cautions that the next time this power releases, Collei will undoubtedly perish. Again, if we take the idea of delusions originating from the Archon Residue, we can come up with some logical answers. But there is one thing I failed to mention. Why does the delusion and the power of the Archon Residue give off the scent of mist grass? Mist grass, or mist flower, in the real world is known as GYPSOPHILA. GYPSOPHILA symbolizes purity, sincerity, love, compassion, and trust. Similar traits that many speculated of Tsaritsa in her past. But if we take the symbolisms of mistgrass and try to connect some dots with the resentment and the hatred of the Archon Residue, it's very conflicting. So what's the deal here? At its core, regardless of its symbolism, the GYPSOPHILA is considered an invasive species or weed. This plant grows best when it's protected from the wind. Do I need to go further with this? Tsaritsa's loving past and the nature of her current existence, her history with Barbados, and her goal to challenge Celestia through the usage of hatred and resentment. If delusions are in fact stronger than visions, that's good news for Tsaritsa. But it's hard to deny that this requirement that's needed to keep delusions from backfiring could be a hindrance. Perhaps this is why the Fatui is trying to infuse children with the Archon Residue to manipulate their mental state at a young age. And if this is true, why? Where did Tsaritsa get this idea from? Tartaglia had a very interesting childhood. Wherever he went, he wreaked havoc and oozed with passion for battle. Not long after joining the ranks of the Fatui, he was inducted as one of the Harbingers and was acknowledged by the Tsaritsa and given a delusion. Interestingly, at the current moment of the game, Childe is the only character that can use a vision and delusion at will. It's a curious thing that the Tsaritsa, who despises the gods, is okay with Childe using a vision when delusion is proven to be stronger anyway. But obviously, Tsaritsa knows better. His Foul Legacy Transformation. Contrary to some opinions, Foul Legacy Transformation is not a power created by a delusion. It's obvious from reading Childe's backstory that this transformation power originated from the Abyss, from his master, Skark. Now, if you're unfamiliar, there's a transformation method used by the Abyss Order called the Abyssal Gospel. This was outlined during Daneslave's quest in the description of a dungeon. This transformation created the Abyss Herald. Now, in my theory, this Foul Legacy transformation originated from the same source. Now, here's where Childe gets even more interesting. Within his transformation, Childe is able to utilize both his vision and delusion's power simultaneously, using both hydro and electro attacks in this form. The only problem is this takes a toll on his body and he cannot retain this form for a very long time. This could be due to the incompleteness of the current state of delusions. Delusion's inherent restrictions make it difficult when it tries to synergize with its opposite, the visions. All the meanwhile using this altered transformation technique from the Abyss to forcefully harness two elements together. Now here's a question for you. What would happen if a complete version of a delusion is achieved? Perhaps by directly injecting an Archon Residue in a human's body at a young age? A complete internal delusion-like powers with no restrictions? And what would happen if Tsaritsa had the ability to give visions at will to these individuals with no backfiring restrictions? Surely there's no way, right? It's not like she has the power of every element or anything.